Well, 7 o'clock. Glad you're here on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. We'll begin with a word of prayer tonight. And Kurt, would you lead us in prayer, please? Well, we're continuing on prayer tonight, and we're going to look at a couple more Wednesdays, I think, on prayer, and go to something else. But we're going to look at I think the most common prayer that we may find in the Bible, maybe the most common prayer that people pray today, and it's not the Lord's Prayer as we sometimes think about, or the model that Christ gives on the prayer. But it's a prayer that people pray asking for forgiveness, you might say. Asking for forgiveness, but at the same time, not wanting to live a life that's worthy of God answering that prayer. A good example of this is in Numbers 23 and verse 10. This is we might call it the prayer of Balaam. He says, "Who can count the dust of Jacob or number 1/4 of Israel? Let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his." Well, that's a prayer that Balaam is praying. Let me die the death of the righteous. Well, that's good. I want to die like they die. Let my end be like his, like Jacob. Jacob was a good man. He wasn't perfect, of course, but he still was a great man and a righteous man. And Balaam's comparing his life to that of Jacob, wanting to be like him. But on the other hand, when you look at Balaam's life, nothing in the Scriptures is ever said in a positive way about him. Everything's pretty much negative. Nothing positive is said about him. And because of that, make you wonder, why would Balaam want to pray this prayer? But yet a lot of people pray this prayer. I want to die the death of the righteous. I want my end to be like this great brother or sister or somebody we find in the Bible. But when it comes to the life that they're living, it doesn't match accordingly. Many individuals, they have no use for God, and they're living their life the way they want to. They get scared or they get sick or something like that, and all of a sudden they cry out to God for help. But when that tragedy or whatever it may be passes, well, then they're back to their old way. And that's what we sort of find there in the life of Balaam. But a couple of things about his life and how he lived it. In Numbers chapter 22, this is where the Moabite king Balak sends word to Balaam, "I want you to curse the people of Israel, the nation of Israel." Balak was scared of them. He knew what Israel had done to the other nations around, how they had been defeated. And Balak knew he was going to have to go against them at some point. So what he's wanting to do is for Balaam to curse the people. He's a prophet of God. He can do that. And that's what he says in verse 6. "Therefore, please come at once, curse the people for me, for they are too mighty for me. Perhaps I will be able to defeat them and drive them out of the land. For I know that he whom you blessed is blessed, and he who you cursed is cursed." Well, Balaam says to this request, "Let me go ask God." That's not the right answer. This is a prophet of God. he shouldn't even have any thought about cursing the people of God. Why would you want to do that? But yet, he should have said here to Balak or to Balak's messengers, no, I'm not going to do that. That's wrong. Go on about your business. But no, he comes around here, well, let me ask God about this. And he does, and God says no. You're not going to do it. And he tells these messengers from Balak, and they go back and tell him he's not going to do anything like that. And some more messengers are sent a second time. And they ask the same question. And Balaam says, let me go ask God again. Let me go ask him. Why ask him a second time when he knows what the answer is going to be the first time, what it was the first time? And sure enough, the answer is the same. No, you cannot curse them. And then, that's from verse 20, chapter 22 and verse 12, and God said to Balaam, you should not go with them, you should not curse the people, for they are blessed. So he tells Balaam, you can't even go with them. At least on the first time when people came to him, you can't do this. Well, after the second time they come, God says, okay, you can go with them if they come to you. And it seems that no sooner than God gets this out of his mouth, Balaam begins to pack his bags and he goes to them. He disobeys God. If they come to you, you can go with them. But he was ready to go with them because he was looking for maybe some financial gain in this. And as he is traveling to go with them or making his way, that's where the angel appears in front of him. The donkey sees it, and 3 times the donkey goes off the side, and the last time he crushes Balaam's leg, and he whips the donkey. He said, I would kill you if I could. If I had something to kill you with. And that's when the donkey speaks, and Balaam realizes, I made a mistake. This donkey has saved my life. Because what the angel was going to do was going to kill Balaam. He's going to kill him because he disobeyed God. And the angel here does not. The donkey speaks. Balaam sees the angel. And Balaam makes his way on to the people there. But when Balaam gets there, here's what he says to Balak in chapter 22 and verse 38. And Balaam said to Balak, look, I have come to you. Now I have any power at all to say anything. The word that God puts in my mouth, that I must speak. So he tells Balak, anything I tell you, it's going to be from God. It's not going to be about me or from me. So he tells Balak that. And God tells Balaam, I want you to bless the people. And Balaam does. He blesses the people of Israel. And he tells Balak, here's what I did. I didn't curse them, I blessed them. And Balak gets all mad about it. I didn't want you to do that, but he does it anyway. So Balaam and Balak, they sort of come together there, and they began to work on things. And eventually, Balaam makes a big mistake, as we'll see in a moment. And in Numbers 23 and verse 10, after Balaam goes back to Balak and he's staying there, that's what brings about him to say this, let me die the death of the righteous and let my end be like his. So he makes that statement. Again, he's got some good intentions here, it seems. That's what he's going to do. But after this, after Balaam would not curse the people of Israel, he tells Balak something. And he says, I can't curse them. I can't bring any ill will on them. But here's what you want. If you want to defeat Israel, here's what you do. And he gives Balak some inside information. You let them marry your women. If they'll marry your women, then the women will carry them off into idolatry, That'll make God angry. And God will judge them. And God will kill them. It's pretty much to that end. And Balak said, well, that sounds good. I'll do that. And yet, why would a prophet of God want to bring harm upon his own people? Here he is 1 minute saying, let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his. And then out of the next breath, he's saying, well, here's how you can go about defeating Israel. If you want to destroy his own people, if you want to destroy them, here's what you do. And that's not what a child of God does. And yet you see it a lot. People who say, I want to die the death of the righteous. I want to let my end be like his. But yet you look at the life they're living, they're not living the life, they're living the life of Balaam. That's what they're doing. It's talking out of both sides of the mouth. And sure enough, the advice that Balaam gave, Balak took. And in Numbers 31 and verse 16, it says, look, these women caused the children of Israel through the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the incident of Peor, and there was a plague among the congregation of the Lord. So Balak took Balaam's advice, and here comes the plague. They went against God, worshiping the idols, doing all that they could do to make God more and more angry. And God then punishes them with this plague. We even come to the New Testament. We can find more about Balaam. And again, nothing positive is ever said about him. Revelation 2:14. The church at Pergamos. But I have a few things against you, because you have there those who hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit sexual immorality. So here's the church at Pergamos was doing basically the same thing that Balaam did to Israel. They had become a stumbling block to the lost, or maybe even to the saved to some degree. Balaam wouldn't curse them, but yet he told Balak, here's how you destroy them. Not a whole lot of difference there. That's sort of like splitting hairs. Oh, Lord, I didn't curse them. No way did I did that. I just passed on some information. And it brought them down. Peter talks about Balaam, 2 Peter 2:15. They have forsaken the right way and gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. So Balaam was for hire. That's what he wanted in the very beginning. He knew that the king Balak was going to offer a lot of money if he would do this, set him up for life, but God wouldn't let him. But he kept working and working, trying to find a way to do it, trying to find something to come about and curse the people of God without really cursing them. He does that, and he got paid. He got paid, I'm sure, very, very well for this, because his plan worked. So we go back to Numbers 23 and verse 10. Again, that's where he says, let me die the death of the righteous, and let my end be like his. Balaam knew that there was a righteous life to be lived. He knew that. He knew that he one day was going to die. He mentions that right here in his prayer. He knew that as well. He knew it's appointed unto man once to die. After this is judgment. And that's about the only thing that can be said good about Balaam. Is he knew this, but yet he didn't live by it by any means. And there in Psalms 90 verse 12, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom and be prepared for that day. And when we will pass on. But here, as Balaam did, he was not prepared for it. He knew it was coming, but he did not prepare himself for it. And when it came to the death of Balaam, how did he die? You recall how he died? Or where he died? What were the circumstances of his death? He died in a battle with the enemy. Who killed him? What nation killed him? His own people. His own people killed him. He shouldn't have been there, but he goes. This is Numbers 31 and verse 8. They killed the kings of Midian with the rest of those who were killed, Evi, Rekem, Zur, Hur, and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. Balaam, the son of Beor, they also killed with the sword. He never went back to his people. He stayed with the enemy. Let me die the death of the righteous. If that be the case, you better change friends, Balaam. Let my end be like his. Well, you're going to die all right, but the outcome after death is going to be quite different. And the very people that he wanted to curse but didn't, the very people he put the stumbling block in front of, they're the ones that killed him. His own people did this. So, if he wanted to die the death of the righteous, then why was he living among the enemy? Why was he living there? You can't do that. You can't be among the enemy and die the death of the righteous. You can't run with the wrong crowd. You can't do that either. He had a desire to go to heaven, but he didn't have the determination to go. And that's where a lot of people falter. They have that desire, but they don't have the determination. It's not in their heart. This is what I want to do. I want to go to heaven. That desire's a good desire. But do as God says, well, they're not determined yet to do that. Again, we got to determine if we want to go to heaven or not. And everybody's got the desire to go. In Matthew 16:28, here's something that Balaam failed to realize. For what profit is it to a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? What will a man give in exchange for his soul? Balaam put his soul on the auction block to Balak. How much you'll give me? How much you'll give me if I'll give you a way, show you a way to destroy Israel? And he put it out there. Sometimes things of great value at an auction will go for pennies. We've probably seen that before. But our soul's worth a whole lot more than a few pennies. It's the most valuable thing that we have. The most valuable thing we have. And many fail to see that. Therefore, they put the soul out there for sale. The rich young ruler, he sold his soul for one thing. Now, he had a desire. You remember, he came and asked Christ, "What good, great Rabbi, Master, what good thing must I do?" And he told him, "I do all these." But there was one thing that he was not determined to do. He wasn't determined to give up his wealth, and Christ knew that. Christ knew the man's heart. In Luke 16, verse 13, no servant can serve 2 masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Balaam wanted both. He wanted to serve both God and mammon. That's what he wanted to do. And can't do it. It won't work that way. So here's the final point here. Balaam wanted to be numbered with the righteous in death, but chose to be numbered with the sinners in life. Some people want nothing to do with God. They want nothing to do with the church or Jesus. But you let something go on in their life, and a tragedy of some sort, and sometimes they'll say, many times they'll say, call the preacher. It happens. And God knows the difference in a penitent person and those who are manipulating him. He knows the difference. I think we're going to talk a little bit about this next week. You can manipulate the church. You can do that. But you'll never manipulate God. Never happen. Folks, do it all the time. And if you don't know the heart, you think they're wanting to do right, but they're just wanting to use the church for something. It may be I need somewhere to get married, or I need somewhere to have a funeral, or it may be a baby shower, a wedding shower. Who knows what it could be? And you might see them for a while, and they manipulate. But they're not fooling God. He knows. He knows what's going on. And many people want Jesus as their Savior, but they don't want him as Lord. And that's where the difference is. Many people think morality will get them into heaven. Just being a good person. And again, if that's all it takes, morality, then why did Christ come and die? Why did he do that? If just being a good person is all it takes. So there's the prayer of Balaam. That prayer is prayed a lot by individuals. They want to have the desire of heaven, but they don't have the determination of heaven. That prayer is prayed a lot. Anything on this? Anything on Balaam? Just don't die the death of Balaam. Don't die with the enemy. Sometimes a person will say, they wouldn't catch me dead there. Well, make sure of that. Make sure of it. Sometimes people find themselves in precarious situations. Well, okay, a couple of minutes early, but we'll stop here and we'll take up on prayer again next week.